Hey friends, it's Andy. Welcome to our new show, Accelerate Expresso. Look, I know you're busy, and it's hard to keep up with all 6 of the great episodes we publish each week. So, with this show, Accelerate Expresso, we're going to deliver highlights from each episode from the previous week. And in the process, give you short, delicious shots of insight from a show you might have missed, and to help amp you up for the coming week. Now, before we jump into it, please remember to visit iTunes or Google Play or wherever you listen to subscribe to this podcast. And while you're there, leave a review, please, for Accelerate. We need your feedback to ensure that we keep delivering the high levels of value you expect. Okay, let's Expresso.
Hi, this is Alec Paul, I'm Andy's son, and I'm stepping in for him today because he's out sick. So let's begin. On Monday, in episode 452, Sally Duby, West Coast General Manager of the Bridge Group, discusses misdirected and inaccurate email campaigns, along with how AI is developing in the sales space. Let's listen in.
Yes, and I think that we're probably in agreement that they are some of the worst prospecting emails.
I've got many examples of those.
Exactly.
I was just, as we talked about, I was just at the SaaStr conference a couple weeks ago, and there'll be several months by the time this episode airs, but yeah, I was going around from booth to booth and introducing myself as a podcaster. And in some cases, interested in talking to their CEO or whoever is there, see if they have an interesting story that might be worth having on the show. And so I was extremely clear when they scanned my badge. Can we scan your badge? Absolutely. But I just want to make sure you know. I'm not a prospect.
Right.
I'm here to talk to your CEO. Don't send me an email. Don't follow up. They all have.
Yes.
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 You came by. I remember talking to you at the booth. Well, actually, no. You didn't.
Right. And so you instantly lose credibility when you do things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get these emails, hey, Sally, I want to talk to you about our great list that we have. So when can you schedule a few minutes so I can tell you about our great list? Well, I don't care about your great list. I'm sorry. That's not my need, right? So and so I just keep hitting delete. And then the next one is, hey, you haven't responded to my, my previous email. So I wanted to raise this to the top of your email. I still want to tell you about how great we are.
Yeah. Well,
or how cool. Right. And again, it's like, sorry, that's not of interest to me. Or we get the ones just like you said, hey, Sally, we want to talk to you about your security and what are you doing to, prevent DDoS attacks? And it's like, oh my God, we're a small boutique consulting company. Seriously? I'm not your buyer. Why are you wasting your time on me? And that's because the people don't understand who their target market is and who the right buyers are and what the messaging is, who they should be going after.
Yeah.
And so they're not being successful, right?
Right. They're doing any research to it at all.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly. And they're not getting guidance from management, or I would never have been on anybody's list.
Right. Well, I saw an interesting post, Facebook post. Well, was it LinkedIn? Must have been LinkedIn over the weekend. Who is it from? Friend Chad Burmeister. I don't know if you know who Chad is.
I know Chad.
You know
Love
Chad.
Yeah.
So everybody knows Chad. So
yes.
So Chad's post was basically, hey, here's an application or a company working on an application that basically can do, I think he used a range, like 75 to 90%, this AI-based app, 75 to 90% of what an SDR could do. With greater consistency, basically game over. What's your thought about that?
I think that maybe there is a place for some of that technology to automate some routine tasks. I don't know that it can replace an SDR. At the end of the day, where SDRs are successful is when they actually engage. And to me, engagement is having a conversation that is relevant to that buyer and can ask those intelligent questions, get back information and keep the conversation going and show that, there is a reason why they should want to engage further and talk to us because we can help them at some point. I'm not sure that AI is there yet. I remember AI from the 90s. And it's still, it's getting much better, but I don't think it's there yet to be able to replace having those personal conversations that will get people to say, yes, I'm willing to have an hour conversation with your sales team, your solutions expert, whatever you want to call them and label them, to find out more. There's very few that can do it by email only. Again, you've got to have that one-on-one conversation to be able to express and understand what's going on in that person's world and how you can help them.
On Tuesday, in episode 453, Josiane Feigon, sales futurist and founder of Telesmart Communications, discusses with Andy how SDR managers are trying to gamify the job and how sales orgs are creating new positions to allow advancement in the SDR area.
I know that that's changing. I mean, the SDR world, managers are trying really hard to make it fun, to do to gamify it, to do more competition, to give more prizes, to give bonuses, to include them more, because they really are still the first level of contact. And, some of them are getting paid really well at the SDR level. So they're trying to keep them any way they can. But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's sort of a ruthless job. No one's answering the phone. If they do, you barely get a second to talk to them, maybe 19 at the most seconds. You're constantly, dealing with rejection, and then they disappear and vanish. So it's not an easy position to have. But, the quantity of calls that they're still making still demonstrates that it's still a really viable position that's making inroads in the sales pipeline.
So is part of the answer there, though, to, again, more along the lines of the career path? Because, if you look at another job type that, changes fairly frequently is engineers, right? It's a fairly fungible skill set. But engineering talent tends to go where there's interesting work to be done. And it seems like that's a challenge for us with SDRs and people coming in these entry-level roles is we want to keep them, much like you're trying to retain your engineers. We got to give them something interesting to do. I mean, it just can't, it's hard to imagine that it's, be the same old thing for 5 years. That I think, I know there are individuals out there that have done SDR roles for much longer, but they can't all be structured like, the high intensity, high volume of contacts and so on. There has to be something that gives a level of interest to it.
I agree. And really the lifespan of an SDR is really no more than 18 months, if not a whole lot less these days. So, they're really coming in as just a big career path and moving even to a team lead or anything that moves them out of it after a short period of time. So they're kind of hanging in there and then they're moving on fairly quickly.
Yeah. But I mean, when you look at the numbers, right, within an organization, the opportunities scale, right? I mean, there's at the next level up, there aren't as many. So that means if these people are leaving, they're going. You're losing that expertise and that knowledge as a company. Is I think the challenge and a trend I'd like to see is that we as an industry do a better job of saying, how do we define this role in such a way that we encourage the development of new skills and, as I said, really keep it of interest so that people feel like they're moving, even if they're not necessarily changing job, they still feel like they're progressing in their career.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of sales organizations are opening up a lot more positions to show that there is some advancement. Because in the old days, it was just like, maybe inside sales and then field sales. And now there's so much more in the progression. And also SDRs, some report into marketing. They don't report into sales. So there's a lot of places you can move into and progress within a marketing organization or a sales organization.
Wednesday, in episode 454, Lincoln Murphy, customer success architect and mentor at Storm Venture, explores how we got to the point where customer success is a new operating philosophy. Not just for SaaS, but for all businesses. He also compares reducing churn with real revenue growth. Let's hear what he has to say.
What I'd like, because I know where our time is limited, and of course that's in the book, and it's a story that's pretty well known. But what I think would be interesting is it's a takeoff of that, and it kind of goes into some stuff that's not in the book. And that is, how did we get to this point where customer success is this sort of this new operating model for not just SaaS businesses, but really any kind of business. And it goes back to actually that genesis at Salesforce when customer success was coined not just as a term, but really as an operating philosophy for the company. And it said, look, we have to make sure that our customers are getting value from us. What happened was, obviously Salesforce did the most successful SaaS company ever, and obviously has a lot of people working there. Well, what happened is you had, as you do in companies, you have people leaving. And those people that were early at Salesforce left to become investors themselves. They left to start companies, and then other people that came on a little bit later, they left to maybe start companies or go work at other companies. And what you had was this cross-pollination of these ideas around this concept of customer success. And really where it started to take hold was with the investors were really starting to get more mature in the way they looked at subscription businesses and being able to say, hey, you look like you're losing a lot of customers this month or over the last quarter. What can we do about that? And you had people that had exposure to what Salesforce was doing saying, well, we used to do this, or we kind of looked at it this way. And so that cross-pollination really started to take hold. And so it's interesting, that you sort of start with that story about what happened at Salesforce, because it wasn't just where customer success started. It's because that's where it started, and because kind of those people went on to other places.
Sure.
that we got this understanding of this new kind of way of thinking. But also in SaaS primarily, so not just Salesforce, but as we move kind of out, concentric circles out from the Salesforce ecosystem, you get to this point where you have a lot of subscription revenue, right, tied up in these SaaS businesses, and you had a maturing of the people that were coming into those businesses from a customer success perspective, and you had investors who either had that exposure to Salesforce directly or obviously saw what was going on there, and it just kind of all boiled over and said, I think it's time to start looking at this whole thing is not just about customer acquisition. It's about acquiring customers that are going to be here for the long haul and growing our relationship with them over time. And so real quick, one of the ways, and this isn't in the book because the book is it was very specific. We worked with Wiley, and we could spend hours talking about the whole book writing experience, but there's a lot of things that either aren't in the book because of their amazing editors, or just because there are things that have come up since then. I mean, the book was published in early 2016, but even in that, just in the last year, I think we're going on just about a year since the book has been out, things have evolved. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is customer success driven growth. So I've even tried to reposition customer success as that growth driver, just to kind of differentiate it from what some people might think of customer success as simply a way to, unfortunately, as the title of the book says, a way to reduce churn. I look at it as, once you get churn out of the way, now it's a growth driver, right? Now we can get our customers to stay longer. That's the reducing churn part. But now we can get them to buy more, and we can get them to invite us into other parts of their business, and we can get them to advocate for us externally, right? Tell their friends and peers about us. If we can do all of those things, that is a significant growth driver.
Right.
The problem is those four things that we all say we want aren't necessarily things that most companies operationalize around. Right. They kind of still leave it up to chance. And I think if you look at customer success driven growth as that growth engine that you can apply to your business, you can get all four of those things. But it absolutely starts, kind of what you were saying very early on here, it absolutely starts with making sure that we don't just grow at all costs. We don't just go out and try to acquire as many customers as we can. We acquire customers that have success potential in the first place. So
I do want, just so I don't leave people hanging, is the basic story of the Salesforce was that Dave Dempsey, a senior executive, says, look, we're churning at 8% per month, which is virtually 100% turnover per year. And, we can't pour enough new business into the top of the funnel to sustain real growth at that rate.
Right.
So we've got a problem. So, here was an existential threat, like I said, to this company that we all know and like and look up to. It's like, well, it really wasn't that long ago that they really had to come to grips with the fact that, they were sort of like, HBO back in the 80s and 90s that had similar churn rates on their pay subscription services, and we're also faced a real existential threat. Basically 100% turnover in customers every year.
Well, and that's, and I sorry, I meant to go back and sort of close that loop. But you're right.
Well, that's why I'm
that's
here.
The thing. Yeah, I appreciate that. But like you said, it may not seem like a very big churn rate, but the reality is it adds up.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So you look at so it's single digits.
Yeah. 8 times 12 is 96.
It starts to become a major problem. But what I always like to remind people is it's not. Here's the thing about churn. Customers churn for one of two reasons, and these are the only reasons. One, something happens to them. They go away. They go out of business. Maybe they get acquired, though. Even I say if they get acquired, that maybe should be an opportunity. But we'll go ahead and figure that in here. So they either go away, they go out of business, or they get acquired. The other reason they don't stay with us, the reason that they churn, is because they didn't achieve their desired outcome through their interactions with us. And my definition of customer success is when your customers achieve their desired outcome through their interactions with your company. That's it. Now, why they don't achieve their desired outcome is, there's several reasons. One could be that you acquired a customer that never had success potential in the first place, right? So this is the growing at all costs. We'll sign any customer that will sign. We'll do whatever we can to acquire as many customers as possible, even if they don't have success potential, and that's a problem. The other reason is we acquire customers with success potential, but we don't do the things necessary to make them successful. And so when you have a high churn rate, it's not necessarily because they're all bad fit customers. It could very well be that you are just simply not doing the things through all of your interactions with them to ensure that they achieve that desired outcome. So, I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind. And once we start to understand that, we understand that churn really is just a symptom.
On Thursday, episode 455, Philip Schweizer, CEO of SalesWings, discusses the role of AI in sales.
It's good you mentioned that, because I think it's worth talking about the role or importance AI and technology should take in our daily sales. Mm-hmm. We've talked about data that you're putting into your algorithm.
Right.
I read an article about a data scientist. I can't remember which company he's working for, but one of the marketing analytics companies,
okay.
and he called the most difficult task, what he called the last mile, is to translate data into actionable, meaningful data for company. So let me make an example. You don't need AI to tell a sales guy that the CEO is a better lead than an intern. But you can come up with a very complicated algorithm which will actually tell you, hey, by the way, this is the CEO with 95% accuracy. He's a better lead than the intern. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yes.
So don't get me wrong. SalesWings has a very strong technology in its back end.
Sure.
But what we're coming up with is not. It is what it is. It's pointing the sales guy to the best leads,
Right.
And it helps them taking that next decision. But we're not telling the sales guy, you need to call now this lead. We're going to tell him, out of these 100, look at these 5, maybe these 10, and then you decide who you should be calling back.
On Friday, in episode 456, Andy's regular partner on Frontline Fridays, Bridget Gleason, and he chat about selling past the initial buying decision. Here they are.
Yeah, I had a conversation today with a candidate we're talking to for a VP of customer success role. Mm-hmm. And he asked, what were after they become a customer, what were their expectations? What are their expectations of what LogSci was going to provide? And we had a really good discussion about that. And I said, I think our problem right now is we haven't done a good job as a salespeople setting up what those expectations
should be, understanding what the customer's expectations are, and then helping also to define them. That all starts at the beginning. And even in terms of like what you're talking about, once they've made a decision to, yes, I want to buy something, and even if, let's say, they end up buying it, were you the one that helped set the expectation for, are they going to be happy with it after they bought it? The selling doesn't stop after you've closed the deal, especially in a SaaS company.
Oh, no, not at all.
And so you've got the selling needs to continue. And again, if you've sold past that initial sort of what is the pain and what's the solution for that, if you've just sold past that too quickly, and it's sort of a muddy value proposition that they don't even know exactly what it is that they should expect, you can have a really difficult time when it comes to, let's say you get the deal, when it comes to renewal, when it comes to keeping them as happy customers, it's going to be more challenging.
On Saturday, episode 457, Alex Berman, co-founder of Experiment 27, a company that provides lead generation services for digital agencies, shares with us his hard-earned interview techniques. So
I do two parts of any interview. So the first one is I'm just on a quick call. I just try to get culture fit. So I try to see if they're cool or not. So I'll ask them questions about their background. Like basically we'll just conversate like me and you are having a conversation right now.
So definition of cool?
Cool, just like, can we get along? Do we have rapport? Okay. All right. Like, are we, am I impressed with their background?
It's a technical term, I know. I just wanted to...
Yeah, no, I know. I'm not a big fan of of those in-depth like corporate interview questions. I read an article a while ago that I can't remember where I read it, but it said that the entire vocal interview process going back and forth is actually not predictive at all of the actual job success. So I try to not put too much emphasis on that. The next part of the trial, I do actually put emphasis. So if they are cool, or if they are a good culture fit, then I'll give them an hour or two of work for them to do. So for sales, it's almost always write a cold email campaign for X27,
right?
And come up with 20 people that you could send it to, and then let me know how it goes. And they don't usually have to send the emails. I just want to see what the lead quality is, and I want to see what the type of email they write is.
So that's it, friends. Another excellent week of Accelerate, the world's best sales podcast. Please take 30 seconds right now, go to iTunes, subscribe, leave a review. I personally want to know what I can do to make this an even more valuable resource for you. For our regular listeners, I'll see you bright and early Monday morning. For everyone else, we'll see you again back here next week. Until then, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.